know by doing the thing that God has told his people to do. Okay? God blesses those who do the works that he has commanded. We said verse 25. So God expects things of them. And this is tough for a lot of people, because a lot of people, that message that's out there in a lot of religious circles that kind of permeates people is just, well, you just got to believe, right? Sir?
It's comforting.
It's comforting, absolutely. And really, it's an easy way out, if you will. It doesn't require. It's one thing for me to say I believe, but now when I got to go do something, well, now that's now requiring a little bit more. It's easy to say I believe. It's like Russ says, it's very comforting. It's falsely comforting, I would add. But oh yeah, and we're going to touch on that. So yeah, but you're right. That idea of just believing that doesn't mean say it doesn't mean anything, but it doesn't mean much. Not in the context that you don't have any kind of actions, works, changes in your attitudes, behaviors, and the things you do. So it's a very easy way out, and it's kind of I'll just say intellectually lazy. Okay, it's just like I believe. It's funny how when you talk to people, people sometimes that you encounter that aren't living a righteous life or pursuing after righteous things will tell you that what? Oh, I believe God. I believe in the Almighty. Yeah. You're absolutely right. So, and that's Paul talked a lot about that, about what are the bounds, if you will, of grace. We shouldn't just say, well, we have grace and I'm going to do whatever I want. I got grace. That's really kind of a misuse of it, so to speak. So let's hone in on this faith without works. So hone in on 14 through 18 again. Again, James says, what does it profit, my brethren, if someone says he has faith, but he doesn't have works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to them, depart in peace, be warmed, be filled, but do not give them the things which are needed for the body, what is the profit? Thus also by faith, if it does not have works, it's dead. If you tell somebody, you have faith and I have works, show me your faith without works, and I'll show you my faith through my works, or by my works. So, James is pretty pointed about it here. And what's interesting is James, we talk about grace. James actually only refers to grace once. That was in chapter 4, verse 6. But just because he's not overtly dropping grace out there and talking about it continually, this brother of Jesus was certainly thoroughly committed to the doctrine that salvation was by grace through faith. James knew what Paul knew, and that's the necessity of obedience to God. That need for obedience was not erased when a sinner places his or her faith in Jesus. He knew that you couldn't just say, well, I believe, and that's the end of it. We got to take it. We got to extrapolate this thing on out to the next logical conclusion. For Christians, the idea of salvation by faith and the necessity for works are not mutually exclusive. That's kind of where when you start talking about faith and works, Brother William. Sorry.
We in the church read this thing and we immediately think of the Baptists. James wasn't writing to the Baptists.
No.
James was writing to you and me.
Absolutely.
And sisters in the church. He wasn't talking about any denomination or anything like that. He was talking to us.
Sure.
And that we need to keep that in mind when we read
sacrifices in your own life, not doing the things you want to do, so that you can actually provide for the needs of others. And you can see that in the way we live our lives. Do we view Christianity as a religion, or is it a way of life? And if it's a way of life, you're never going to be satisfied with just following the commands you want to follow. That's not Christianity.
You're right. That's an excellent point. And what James is saying here is that the idea of faith and works, they're not mutually exclusive. We need both. We don't earn our salvation by works, of course, but we should dismiss the responsibility to put that faith into action. That's what James is telling us. So, Paul and James approach the relationship between works and faith from a slightly different direction. Paul faced a mindset that was accustomed to the equation of justification and works of merit. Okay? I got to do these things to be justified. He rejected that mindset and certainly appealed to God's grace, which is manifested to all of us in Christ. James faced a mindset that maintained that justification, that the people James were writing to, kind of were leaning towards the idea that justification didn't have anything to do with works. So we see two different audiences here when James and Paul are both approaching this. Naturally, James appealed to the inseparability of works and faith. But for Paul and James, works were so closely aligned with faith that to speak of one without the other was really impossible. To try to separate faith from obedience and action would be like trying to speak about a marriage without making note of both the bride and the groom, right? So we got a couple of examples here. Let's look at Matthew 7:17. Somebody take a moment to read that for us.
Matthew
7:17.
So every good tree bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears bad fruit.
Okay? And somebody read James 3, verse 12 for us.
And a fig tree not bear to bear olives, or a grape not bear figs. Thus those twain yield what the salt of the Lord is preached.
So we got a couple of examples here where it kind of reiterates that the point that a righteous person is going to do what? It's going to bring forth good things. Okay, so it's a logical conclusion. James further illustrated this application to practical matters when he talked about caring for the needy. There in James 1:27, he talked about pure religion was to do what? He talked about visiting orphans and widows, right? And caring for those who are in need. We read verse 2:16 where basically he says that a faith that dismisses the needy. We talked about, that person being warmed and filled when you just say, all right, God bless you, go about your way. Do they really have what they need? James is saying that no, they don't. And that kind of faith was no more possible than practicing pure religion while neglecting orphans and widows. It just doesn't go hand in hand. Faith that pleases God is responsive to the needs of the helpless, to those around us who are in need. When we have faith, works, and helping people, and doing good things, and spreading the message, they're going to be a natural byproduct. That's what James was really driving at here. Questions, comments?
Didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Repeat the question.
He asked the question, is love considered a work? Brother, I can tell you sometimes it's a lot of work to love some folks. But I don't know, I have to dig a little deeper to answer that.
Was God's love manifested when He sent His Son? Was the Son's love manifested when He went to the cross?
Sure, absolutely. So that you true to His word. John?
So it's actually Galatians 5 calls it a work twice. In Galatians 5:6, for in Christ Jesus neither circumcision nor uncircumcision avails anything, but faith working through love. And then in verse 13, for you, brethren, have been called to liberty. Do not use liberty as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. So faith is a verb, for love is a verb. It's not a noun. And so it is a word. It's an activity. It's something you have to do.
That's outstanding, John. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. I saw. Hit him first, honey. Hit you, brother.
First Thessalonians 1:3 says that remembering about ceasing work of faith, it says laboring in love.
Laboring in love. That's right. So I think we've got several good examples in Scripture here where love is indeed a work. It's an action. Thank you, guys. That's a great example.
I'm just going to add on to that, too, Mike, that Colossians 3, Paul reiterates, therefore, since you were the elect of God, holy and beloved, again, these are my words, you talk about byproducts. These are byproducts of love. Put on tender mercies, humility, kindness, bearing with one another, forgiving one another. Those are all acts of love, or byproducts of love. And of course, he says, and above all these, put on love, which is the bond of perfection. So,
It's yeah. I made a joke about it, but love is tough sometimes. You know, when we're commanded to love our brethren, love our neighbor, and love. It's. I always say it's hard to love a rattlesnake. But it goes with rattlesnake personality sometimes. But we have to work to do that. Margaret. And do we get in that condition sometimes? I think we all succumb to that sometimes. I certainly have at times. We sometimes don't do things out of love, but out of just a general sense of obligation to others. We're not doing it for the right reasons.
I just check the box.
Yeah, sometimes we're checking the box. You know, how many times have you ever caught yourself saying, I gotta go to church to do, you know, when it's really, I get to go to church. We approach it with the wrong hand. So James gives some examples of this faith in action that we're talking about. And in verses 19 through 24, a couple of interesting points he makes. First off, Brother, you mentioned it earlier about demons. You know, he talks there about that. You know, when we read about demons in Scripture, essentially they appear to be the henchmen of Satan, right? Out there doing Satan's will. They're associated with a lot of things in the Scripture. Sickness, depravity. But here's the thing. Despite their evil prowess, they stand in fear of who? God. Do they not believe? They absolutely believe. They know who God is and His power. And Jesus. They know it. Absolutely. They know it to be true. Which isn't that interesting that even though they know it to be true, they're 180 out from what God would want us to do and want them to do. You know, they're the very antithesis of what God, His will is. But people are often the same way, right? Sometimes people live a life that's the very antithesis of what God would want them to do. And interestingly enough, a lot of those people say they please. But what James is driving at here is that the mere acknowledgement of God doesn't imply that He's pleased. The demons believe, Satan believes. We sometimes think people will think we believe. But what James is driving at is that God wants more from us. Okay? He talks about Abraham. Abraham's journey with Isaac up to Mount Moriah to sacrifice him always fascinates us. Right? How did God? This guy, this kind of faith. Can I have that kind of faith? It's just so interesting when you read about Abraham. Abraham and Sarah had all but despaired about having children. It was pretty far along in their old age that God blessed them with Isaac, that son of promise. Through him, the patriarch's name would be preserved and God's promises would be accomplished. Then, just when they get used to Isaac and having this son that God had promised them, what did God do? He said, "Hey, Abraham, I got something I need you to do." He commanded Abraham to sacrifice this son, to offer him up. Okay? Now, was Abraham willing to do it? Absolutely. I mean, he was there at the point of killing his own son. Abraham obeyed, and Hebrews 11, verse 19 talks about this, and it talks about the kind of faith that Abraham had, that he knew that, as the scripture said, God was able to raise him up. So he had faith that drove him to action. He was willing to do what God required. So both Paul and James referred to Abraham in the context of faith and works. Paul referenced Abraham over in Romans 4, 1 through 5. He referenced him in Galatians 3, 6 through 7, and also in Galatians 5, verse 6. Both of these men wanted to draw out the implications of Abraham's faith for what Christians are to believe and how we're to live. Okay? An important difference in how they approach this is that, Paul talked a lot about pre-conversion faith. And his question was this: when one comes to God for justification, for forgiveness, for salvation, on what basis does God grant it? This apostle answered that it was not on the basis of good works, that only faith in Jesus can result in justification. Okay? James addressed this question a little bit differently. Well, the Lord's brother wanted to know how faith asserts itself into the life of the believer. His answer was that for faith to be pleasing to God, it has to express itself in our behavior, in what we do. And that faith naturally flows forth in works. So think about this. To marry these two ideas up, faith and works. Think about this. Try to imagine God commending Abraham for his faith had he refused to offer up his son. Would he? He told him to do it. It'd be disobedient. So that kind of draws that correlation that, Abraham would be saying, well, he had faith, but you don't have faith enough to act on it. So that's kind of an interesting thing there. In James 2:23, Abraham is referred to as the friend of God. Why? Because he obeyed. He did the things God asked him to do. another example that James gives us of faith in action that comes from James 2, verses 25 and 26. He said, likewise, was not Rahab the harlot also justified when she received the messengers and sent them out on another way? For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. So, James really makes a sharp contrast here. He moved in the latter portion of the scriptures that we're looking at this morning. He moved from Abraham, the father of the faithful, right, to Rahab, the harlot. We read about Rahab in Joshua 2, starting around verse 11. She's also mentioned in the New Testament in about 3 places that we can find. First was over in Matthew 1:5, where she's included in the genealogy of Jesus. We also read about her in Hebrews 11:31, where she's included in that roll call of the faithful, if you will. And then here James is talking about her. Let's actually look at Joshua 2:11. The American Standard says, and as soon as we had heard it, our hearts did melt. Neither did there remain any more spirit in any man because of you. For Jehovah your God, He is God in heaven above and on earth beneath. Those are Rahab's words. Actually, let me back up a little bit here. Back to verse 1. Joshua 2, verse 1. It says, and Joshua, the son of Nun, set out of Shittim 2 men as spies secretly, saying, go, view the land at Jericho. And they went and they came into the house of a harlot whose name was Rahab, and they lay there. And it was told to the king of Jericho, saying, behold, 3 men came in hither tonight of the children of Israel to search out the land. And the king of Jericho sent unto Rahab, saying, bring forth the men that are come to thee, that entered into thy house, for they are come to search out all of our land. And the woman took the 2 men and hid them. And she said, yea, the men came unto me, but I know not whence they were. And it came to pass about that time of the shutting of the gate, when it was dark, that the men went out. Whither men went I know not. Pursue them quickly, for ye will overtake them. But she had brought them up to the roof and hid them in the stalks of flax, which had been laid in order upon the roof. And the men pursued after them the way to Jordan upon the fords, and as soon as they pursued after them, they were gone, and they shut the gate. So what did she do here? She protected these men. Okay? And then we see there later, in this biblical story, Rahab's unexpected faith. We wouldn't have expected her necessarily to do this, but she did it through faith. But it did play a crucial role in the future of God's people. When these spies came to Jericho, they found safety with her. And again, she praises God there in 2:11. The Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth beneath. So Rahab had faith. Huh?
One of our reading classes, Rahab was one of the topics that we can discuss quite a bit. And we really took, we put a lot of it in perspective and realized she essentially was in a sacrificial situation for herself.
Absolutely.
She could have died because of the things that she was doing by hiding them.
Sure.
In the way of escape. And when we really got to look into a lot of it, we just saw really where she could put herself and her family.
Right, absolutely. Kind of brings up the point that when you dig a little deeper on this story of Rahab, it's not just merely her saying, yeah, I haven't seen these guys. She risked her and her family's life to protect these spies. That was certainly going out on a limb. And I have no doubt that it was her faith that drove her to do that. That's a great point. As James concluded his discussion of faith and works, he drew an analogy. He said, "For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also." He answers this question, the question that he posed at the beginning of our text in 2:14. When he asked, he said, "What does it profit, my brethren, if someone says he has faith, but he doesn't have works? Can faith save him?" Of course not. Faith alone can't save you. The examples he used here, we looked at Abraham, he used the example of Rahab. They both support this conclusion. Jesus, over in Matthew 7:21, said that no one would enter the kingdom of God unless he did the will of who? His Father. God's will requires things of us. James didn't have interest in setting works against faith and asking which pleases God. He was concerned with defining the kind of faith that does please God. Okay? Have you ever heard, sometimes we have this notion of faith where we reduce it to, well, it's something I can feel, but I can't really tell you. You ever had people approach you with that? In or out of the church? You know, people just something you feel is a condition in the heart. Justification and all that it implies, and all that James and Paul talk about, is that faith requires that man or woman of faith be a practicing believer, not someone that's just passive in it that says, I believe. According to Matthew 12:35, faith and love begin in the heart. It talks about that the good man out of his good treasure bringeth forth good things, and that an evil man of his treasure brings forth evil things. So if we've got that faith in these good things of God the Father and Christ residing in us, what are we going to produce? Good stuff. We're going to do good stuff. Unless our feelings and our notion of faith translates into doing things like, providing for the helpless and all that goes with obedience to God, then we'll be like a body without a spirit. We'll be spiritually dead, so to speak. And inactive faith is really no use in God's kingdom. Now, one thing that I'm kind of going off script here, just a thought I just popped in my mind. The works that we take on look different to different people. And what I mean is, does that mean that because I'm doing things that we're all going to contribute in our own way? The works that one person has and the talents and skills that they're able to use are different than what the next Christian might have. Right? But there's something that every Christian can contribute. That faith we have should drive every one of us to do something different in life.
That's one of the importance of having a body.
Yes.
Because knowing that everybody has their own talent, the things that they can excel at and they can get back with, allows each person to contribute. It also allows you to spread the load across. So it keeps somebody from feeling they have everything on it. If you have somebody next to them that, I'm not as good as, if this is whatever the task is.
Yeah.
If you're better at it than I am, maybe I can work with you, I learn it, you can help build me up.
Absolutely.
I grow, and then we're
bit. And I guess what I was trying to say too, and I didn't articulate it well, is I think a lot of times we shy away from doing good works because we feel inadequate, or we feel like, I don't really have anything to contribute. Everybody who's in the body of Christ has something to contribute. Sometimes we just got to figure out what that is. Questions, comments? A few minutes ahead of schedule.
You sort of, not right, two examples, good examples, works, faith, express their works. There's also a third one in there. It's a negative example. And you can also see the devil, the demons, they believe. But the people that follow right because we know their works are not works of God.
Absolutely. Good, excellent point. Any other questions, comments? Brother William.
I know that each of us has our own individual talent. We need to pursue it to the fullest. But he has also told each of us to spread this news. So I'm concerned that the biggest failing that we have overall is the failure to spread the news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I think we need to be busy about that every day. And I think we shy away from it every day.
You're right. Everybody here, Brother Leon, he said our biggest tasking as Christians is to go out and spread God's message. And it's probably represents the biggest opportunity for us, yet probably the biggest area in which we often fail. And again, I think it comes back to that sense sometimes of inadequacy. People say, I'm just, I can't do that,
Except we can.
We can, absolutely. Sometimes that's as simple as talking to a friend or talking to a neighbor, living a life that gives them the type of example they need. You can spread that message even sometimes in casual conversation.
What we do is we look for opportunities and close our eyes when the opportunity shows up.
Sure.
Look all around the blink, look around some more after the opportunity is bad.
Well, I missed that one. Back to the next one. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the saying I heard, if you're going to pray for rain, you better bring an umbrella. We say we want opportunities, but then we let them pass us by. That's an outstanding point. And again, there's a lot of reasons that I think a lot of times it's our own personal insecurities. Sometimes we have the misnomer that if I'm going to spread God's word, then I got to be some phenomenal speaker. That I got to be a Lance or a Dave or John Burnett or any number of guys in here that are phenomenal speakers and can spread that kind of message. You don't necessarily have to be. I'm not. And most of us aren't going to be that level of speaker, but we can all do something. Absolutely. It's always an opportunity. Brother Vernon, I saw you.
Yes, sir. I was just reading over some of the scriptures that we had here in the second chapter. And the portion that I was reading where it says, show me your faith, and I'll show you my faith by my works. And then he goes on and he says, this is verses 18. It says, get to the point. we are like Satan. We tremble, we shudder, we, shirk back instead of taking action.
Sure. Because again, I think a lot of times we don't think we're good enough. We're insecure about it. We just got to get out there and do it. Hey, I appreciate your time this morning. You're a great audience. Thank you.